Alright, what's going on, y'all? So in this video we're going to talk about code talker theory.
I got the USB cord, it's plugged to my microphone. I'm gonna talk to the power. I can't pay electric bill.
And the reason why I'm making this video is because I love talking about this deck. I will talk about it for hours and hours because of how much fun I have with this deck. So we're gonna go over using the side deck feature. I'm gonna talk about the different ways and things that you consider while building this deck for the current format, and talk about what I would think based on what I previously went to locals with, what I would think is a better build. Pretty much we have a 42 card deck here, but this is actually not what I would do. You want to make this a 40 card deck. If you have access to cards such as Small World, then you can go with a higher deck number because you have 3 more search targets for your Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. But if you do not, because you do not have the card yet, getting 40 cards is pretty much necessary so that you can draw into other extenders more consistently with Choose Heatsoul, or you just straight up have a higher percentage of getting Nightmare Corruptor Ibli, or some of the cards that give you access to Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. Cyanide Codec and Microcoder are examples. In my previous build, I had a cross debug. While thinking about the deck, I do like the fact that cross debug is a searchable extender, but it comes up not so often as I'd like it to. In fact, because we have the cards such as Code Exporter and Backup Secretary, Code Exporter is also a searchable extender and a more important one for the choke point of this deck. Therefore, I think taking out the cross debug and adding in something like Mathmech Edition, which is just a free special summon, is a much better extender than cross debug. Speaking of the word cross out designator. I think playing a cross-out package in this deck is pretty good. Again, this card is very expensive, but playing 3 Designator with 1 Ash Blossom, 1 Imperm, 1 Nibiru, and taking out cards such as 1 Subtraction, possibly the Backup Secretary, you can take out the Pancratops, and probably the Change of Heart to just have those cards in and have a cross-out package. That's more consistently and protects the deck a lot more. Because again, Ibli is your only way to defend against Nibiru and Gamma and Imperm. A cross-out package allows you to have 2 ways, and you can have more access to that. Now, this again is the extra deck that I built for this Code Talker deck. The thing that I do like with this build is the fact that it ends on a counter trap. What are people main decking in this format? They are main decking Dark Ruler No More. Dark Ruler No More cannot be responded to by monster effects, which means that even if you set up something like a Tri-Gate package, Dark Ruler No More beats your field. You are not guaranteed to end on Cyanide Conflict and have an Ibli lock with the Salamangreat Sanctuary. You're not guaranteed to end on the conflict. With this build, because of Choose Heatsoul, you are guaranteed to end on the counter trap. Because your end board is so monster dependent and you do not have back row to supplement that monster. For example, Branded Despia has Branded in red, which allows you to summon out Guardian Chimera, and with Ad Libitum, bring back your Mirror Jade. That's all from 1 back row card. These cards are just brain dead Omni Negates, which means that everything else relies on the strength of your monsters. Firewall Dragon, Mech Knight Crusader Avermax, and Code Talker. If you lose these cards' effects, you are going to be in a bad position. So I think ending off and playing decks this format that play with some counter traps to stop exactly Dark Ruler No More is a very good thing to do. And that's specifically why I brought this deck to locals rather than my Sword Soul 10E build, because that deck does not have a single counter trap in that lineup and loses it to Dark Ruler No More in the main deck every time. Now, to talk about what I would think this deck needs. Look at this deck profile and you see there are no hand traps in this format. There are some 2 going second cards, Change of Heart and Down and Wrestle with Pancratops. These cards are good, they're strong, they're limited for a reason, and they trade 1 for 1. However, I think stopping Rogue in like locals formats and like regionals formats are more important. As a result, cards such as Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, the standalone, most famous, most annoying hand trap, is a very good card to include 3 copies of this in the side or in the main. Let's say you don't have access to Ash Blossom Joy Spring, or you're waiting for the reprint that's going to come out in a few weeks. Then you have cards such as Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and Effect Veiler, which came in the Albaz Strike structure deck, which you can supplement instead. Next is in the side deck, I do like having at least 1 Kaiju or Lava Golem and etc. cards for this format. I think getting rid of problem boss monsters in this format by tribute summoning them with the Kaijus are very good. There are still decks running around. Marincess obviously is the number 1 that just makes the towers. Getting rid of it is, I think, a very good thing to do. Forbidden Droplet. Now this is an expensive card. Forbidden Droplet is by far the better card to make and use than Dark Ruler No More. This deck on the crackback on turn 2, if you're going second, you need to make Access Code Talker and kill them immediately because this deck cannot rebuild from this point, especially with this extra deck lineup. You have only one copy of Splash Mage, one copy of Transfer Code Talker. These are your link extenders. Access Code Talker is your one shot with your update damage to kill the opponent in that turn and win the game. If you play Dark Ruler No More, you cannot do battle damage to them. Losing cards to Forbidden Droplet is fine in my opinion. You can pitch random copies of Silent Mining, and if you have Dotscaper and /or Mathematic Sigma, these cards actually recruit your advantage back. Getting rid of the Totally Awesome and the Sprite Elf or any of the tier element cards, these allow you to get rid of those cards, then go into Access Code Talker, pop them, destroy them, get rid of them, and then go in for game. It's an expensive card, but it is the objective right choice for that. I do think that monster mass removals such as Regeki and Dark Hole are still very good because if you do not have access to Forbidden Droplet, or if you don't draw into it, or your Dark Ruler No More, just getting rid of them are pretty good stuff to do. Decks will have ways to bring themselves back, again with back row, but if you can get rid of one whole wave of monster negation with a card like Regeki, you're going to be very, very good. Let's talk more about Dark Ruler No More and even Forbidden Droplet. People are main decking this card in this format. What stops these cards? Counter trap cards. That's why I like this build, like I mentioned previously, because it ends on Salamander Roar every time, and then if you're really lucky, Silent Conflict as well, you can beat stuff like Floodgates and Dark Ruler No More with these counter traps, and they cannot be responded to unless they have Red Reboot. Solemn Judgment and Solemn Strike. Why do I choose these cards? If you are able to play 3 of these cards in the main deck, play some small Solemn package, and you go full combo, when you're going full combo, by the time you get to Decode Talk or Heatsoul, you'll have removed from your deck a lot of cards, like a lot of cards. The chance of opening up one copy of a Solemn card in your opening hand is 30% in a 40 card deck. But if you do one extra draw with Decode Talk or Heatsoul, you have 3 copies of Solemn Judgment, and you haven't drawn into a single one of them, you're late into your combo, you've taken out like 10 cards from your main deck, your chance of drawing this card goes up very much to stop the Dark Ruler No More from completely ruining your day. You can still actually get your Dimensional Barrier as well. If they want to build their board, they're going to have to also go through the Dimensional Barrier as well. Call XYZ, call Fusion, what is Tier Element and what is Sprite going to do? They're going to have to cross out Designator, your Dimensional Barrier, or again have Red Reboot, which people are playing this format, but that's a one-of. If you do not want to play the cross-out package like I mentioned before, Small World is almost a necessity. If you're playing Small World, you have to play 3 copies of Parallel Exceed because it's a Small World bridge. You use Small World to reveal the Exceedant deck, banish something from your hand, and then get your Nightmare Corruptor Ibli to your hand, so that you can normal summon this card and then prevent against those common hand traps, which are Nibiru, Cypher Gamma, and Infinite Impermanence. But again, this card is very expensive, so it's not just as easy, okay, I'm gonna go pick up 3 Small World. Some decks can use it, some decks don't want to use it. This deck does want to use it, maybe it's worth the investment if you enjoy it. Now we have other Cyberse cards that actually can be used as good extenders. Backup Secretary is one that people think is kind of sketchy. I like it, I think it's perfectly fine and usable, but again, you have other cards such as Cyberse Gadget. Cyberse Gadget is pretty good because if you normal summon this card and have Microcoder in hand, you can go link it off, go into Code Talker, Cyberse Gadget summons a token, take that token, just link it off into Lukrembo, and then go into your Transcode Talker, because Transcode Talker requires 2 effect monsters. You won't be able to end on the Lukrembo, but you can still get your combo off that way. I prefer to not play because I think it's just one too much normal summon. Salaman Great Spinny is a card that I think is very good for a very specific reason, and that's IP Masquerena, and I'll talk about that when I get to IP Masquerena. But I think taking Salamangreat Spinny out of the deck, in addition I also took out 1-for-1 in this deck, your Gazelle target is almost always going to be Roar. Again, this is a one-of, you're probably not going to see it, and as a result, you just want to be able to search it off of the codec. Now we talk about the water extenders. This deck previously used, instead of Decode Talker Heatsoul, it used Shooting Code Talker, which is the water Code Talker monster, and you have very, very powerful water extenders. The cards that come to mind exactly are Code Radiator, which is a link from hand. You have Sea Archiver, which is a double material usage because you can use Firewall Dragon, special summon the Sea Archiver, link it off, and then use Sea Archiver's graveyard effect to link it off again. Even though it gets banished, it's still a really strong extender. And then you have Scriptron, which again is another extender, which actually can be used to recruit resources. The water build does not guarantee that you end on a trap card. As a result, I think this deck is better because again, people are main decking Dark Ruler no more and Anti-Spell Fragrance. You gotta get rid of those cards, so I think the counter trap is the best thing to do. However, let's say you want to do that, you don't trust the power of Mekk-Knight Crusader Abramax, that's fine because it's only protects against targeting and a lot of cards do non-targeting stuff. Mirror Jade, for example. And Exorcist are just non-target banishes. Sprite also non-target banishes. Tri-Gate Package is also pretty good. Tri-Gate Package also allows you to banish a monster, so it kind of works like a Baron de Fleur. Target a card on the field and banish it instead of destroying it, and then you can get an Omni Negate as well. You need to play Secure Gardener for that, but it's still a pretty strong build. Then we have the IP Masquerena. This deck, even though you have many ways to get to Signet Codec, 3 copies of Lady Debug, 3 copies of Signet Mining, 3 copies of Microcoder, and 3 copies of Signet Codec. That's 12 cards that somehow, some way, in addition to all these other cards, will get you to your Signet Codec. You will sometimes still brick. As a result, it is important to think about what you do when you do not have your most powerful card. People go Transcode, S-Code Pass, people go X-Code, Mekk-Knight Crusader Abramax Pass, sometimes people throw in a Lukrembo in that sense. You can go into Decode Talker Heatsoul, draw some trap cards, but IP Masquerena, to make a indestructible, non-targetable Mekk-Knight Crusader Abramax, is I think a very good consideration. If your opponent isn't playing cards such as Evenly Matched or back row in general, I think taking out the Lukrembo and slapping in an IP Masquerena is the proper thing to do. With 3 cards, actually, any 3 cards, you can make an IP Masquerena and go into Abramax. What you do, let's say you have, I don't know, Backup Secretary, Cyberse Converter, and what's his free special? Mathemax Subtraction. Take 2 of those cards, go into Splash Mage. Splash Mage, reborn one of those cards, take those 2 remaining monsters, go into IP Masquerena and just pass. Then a IP Masquerena with your Splash Mage, that's 2 monsters summoned from the extra deck, go into Mekk-Knight Crusader Abramax, and then you have Mekk-Knight Crusader Abramax for them to deal with. Non-destructible as well. I think that's a very good thing to do. When you brick, it's a pretty good backup plan in my opinion. But another backup plan, despite all of this that we talked about, is a grindy Code Talker build. Playing another copy of Code Talker, or playing another copy of Transcode Talker, or playing another copy of Splash Mage allows you to keep on playing the game. If you go through your whole combo and you're just about to summon them and prevent them from doing Nibiru, and they slam that Nibiru down, you are probably not going to be able to recruit all your advantage. Unless you draw into Monster Reborn exactly, summon back to Transcode Talker, and then go into Access Code that way. But if you have cards that allow you to rebuild your board, another Code Talker, another Splash Mage, another Transcode, these are the big cards that I think are important, that's a very good thing to have in my opinion. So that's pretty much the end of my ramblings about the theory behind this deck. There are lots of cards. Cyberse as a type of monster has truly so many cards that allow you to just keep on playing and just accrue so much advantage. In addition to majorly powerful cards such as Forbidden Droplet and Dimensional Barrier, you are able to prevent your opponent from playing the game in some sort of way, not to mention of course the main copy of Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. And with cards such as Small World, you can get your consistency really high. That's pretty much what I have to say about this deck. I truly love this deck. And we're still not done with it for this channel. We are going to still do a combo video talking about the combo line, the main combo line, and the alternate stuff that you need to think about when you're comboing with Code Talkers so that you can still end up with your strong board. But for that, that's the end of my rambling session for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and please take care. Have a good one.